Every morning, you wake up with a quiet promise to yourself that today will be different. Today, you'll finally become the person you've always wanted to be, the one you see in your mind. But by noon, something invisible pulls you back into the same old pattern you've been repeating for years. And by night, you're staring at the ceiling, wondering why you still can't seem to change anything at all. This is the story of a man who lived that exact cycle 47 times before he finally broke free. His name was Vincent, and he was a carpenter in a small mountain village where everyone knew everyone's business. He built chairs, tables, and window frames in a dusty workshop that stood behind his modest stone house. His hands were strong from years of work, his craft was honest, and his reputation was once absolutely solid. But Vincent had one small weakness that quietly destroyed everything he touched without him even noticing it at first. He could not finish what he started, no matter how much he cared about the project or person. He would begin a project with tremendous energy and focus, his mind full of detailed plans and careful measurements. Then, halfway through the work, doubt would creep in like cold air through cracks in an old wooden door. He'd tell himself the work wasn't good enough, that people would judge him, that he should start over again. He'd abandon it immediately and start something new, convinced that the next project would somehow be different than before. His workshop became a graveyard of half-built furniture covered in dust, cobwebs, and the weight of broken promises to himself. Customers stopped calling because they learned through experience that he couldn't be trusted with deadlines or their important orders. His wife, Marguerite, never complained out loud, but he saw the growing disappointment in her eyes every single evening. His young daughter, Claire, once asked him why he never finished the dollhouse he had promised her 2 years ago. He had no answer for her innocent question, and the silence in that moment broke something deep inside his chest. He realized with sudden clarity that he wasn't just failing at carpentry or disappointing random customers he barely knew. He was failing as a father, as a husband, and as a man who once believed he had integrity. One cold autumn morning, Vincent sat alone in his workshop, surrounded by unfinished work and the smell of old sawdust. He counted every single project he had abandoned over the past 2 years, writing each one down in silence. 47 projects, 47 times he had started with hope and quit when fear became louder than his own promises. He felt a crushing weight in his chest that made it difficult to breathe or think clearly about anything. That same afternoon, he walked to the edge of the village where an old craftsman named Henrik lived alone. Henrik was in his 70s, blind in one eye from an old accident, and still built the finest cabinets. People said he had once been exactly like Vincent, scattered and unreliable, until something mysterious changed him many years ago. Vincent knocked on the workshop door with a trembling hand, and Henrik opened it without any trace of surprise. "I knew you'd come eventually," Henrik said quietly, stepping aside to let Vincent enter the warm, organized space inside. Vincent explained everything in a rush: the failures, the shame, the promise he couldn't keep to his daughter Claire. Henrik listened in complete silence, his weathered face calm, then led Vincent to a worn wooden bench by the window. "You don't have a talent problem, son," Henrik said, his voice steady and low like distant thunder over the mountains. "You have a finishing problem, And finishing is not about skill or intelligence or any special gift you're missing. Finishing is about having a system that works even when you don't feel like working at all that day. Henrik pulled out a small leather notebook with only 3 simple rules written inside in fading ink from years ago. Rule 1. Never start a second project until the first one is completely done and delivered to the customer. Rule 2. Work in short blocks of time, no more than 2 hours at once, then stop and rest. Rule 3. Every evening, clean your tools completely and prepare the workspace for tomorrow before you leave for home. That's it? Vincent asked, feeling confused because he expected something far more complicated or difficult to understand. That's it, Henrik replied, closing the notebook and handing it to Vincent like it was something precious and sacred. Most men fail because they rely on motivation alone, but motivation is just a feeling that comes and goes. Feelings fade when life gets hard, but structure doesn't care how you feel on any particular morning or night. Vincent took the notebook home, holding it carefully in his calloused hands like it contained some kind of ancient secret. The next morning, he chose one single unfinished chair from the pile of abandoned projects gathering dust in the corner. Just one chair, nothing more, even though his mind screamed at him to work on everything at once. He set a timer for exactly 2 hours and worked only on that chair, ignoring every other distraction around him. When the timer rang, he stopped immediately, even though every part of him wanted to continue working until it was done. He cleaned his tools, swept the floor carefully, and laid out exactly what he'd need for the next day's work. It felt strange and uncomfortable, almost too simple, like there had to be something more complicated required for real change. The second day was much harder because doubt whispered constantly that this system was too slow to make any difference. But he followed the 3 rules anyway, trusting Henrik's words even when his own mind filled with fear and impatience. By the end of the week, the chair was completely done and ready to be delivered to the customer. It wasn't perfect by any measure, but it was finished, and that alone felt like a small miracle to Vincent. He delivered it to the customer who had been waiting 8 long months without any updates or apologies from Vincent. The man was genuinely surprised to see Vincent standing at his door with the completed chair in his strong hands. Vincent felt something he hadn't felt in years, pride, not in perfection, but in keeping his word to another person. He started the next project the following morning, applying the same 3 rules without making any exceptions for himself. Then the next project after that, and the next, each one building slowly on the foundation of the one before. Each time, he followed Henrik's 3 rules without exception, even when it felt boring or when progress seemed painfully slow. Weeks turned into months, and his workshop slowly emptied of abandoned work that had haunted him for so long. His reputation began to quietly rebuild itself in the village as people noticed he was actually delivering on his promises. Then, one ordinary day, a merchant from the distant town arrived at his door with an unexpected and enormous opportunity. The merchant needed 30 matched chairs for a new inn, and he needed them completed in exactly 6 weeks. It was the biggest opportunity Vincent had ever received in his entire career, more money than he'd made all year. It was also the biggest test of everything he had learned, 30 chances to fail and fall back into fear. Vincent felt the old familiar fear rising in his throat like cold water, threatening to drown him before he started. But he remembered Henrik's words clearly. Structure doesn't care how you feel, it only cares what you do consistently. He broke the enormous project into small, manageable pieces that didn't feel overwhelming when he looked at them individually. 5 chairs per week, no more, no less, which meant working steadily without rushing or panicking about the final deadline. 2 hours in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, with rest in between to keep his mind sharp and focused. Every evening, he cleaned and prepared his workspace, setting himself up for success before tomorrow's work even began to exist. The first week went smoothly, and he completed 5 chairs exactly as planned, feeling cautiously optimistic about his progress. The second week, his daughter Claire fell sick with a fever, and he lost 2 full days caring for her. Panic tried to take over his mind, but he adjusted the schedule calmly and kept working without abandoning the system. The third week, a violent storm knocked out power for 3 days, and he had to work by dim lantern light. He worked shorter blocks when necessary, but he still worked every single day without exception, no matter the circumstances outside. By the 5th week, he had 28 chairs completed, lined up neatly in his workshop like patient soldiers waiting. The final 2 chairs were finished 3 full days early, and Vincent stood looking at them in quiet disbelief. When the merchant arrived on the agreed date, he stood in complete silence looking at the 30 perfectly matching chairs. "I've never seen someone deliver early in my entire life," he said, genuine respect clear in his weathered voice. He paid Vincent in full immediately and offered him a long-term contract for future orders at even better prices. That night, Vincent walked home under a sky full of stars, feeling lighter than he had in many years. Marguerite was waiting at the door, and for the first time in years, she smiled at him the way she did. Claire ran to him, holding a careful drawing she had made of the dollhouse he once promised her long ago. "Can we start it together?" she asked, her eyes full of hope that he wouldn't break another promise to her. "Yes," Vincent said firmly, kneeling down to her level and looking directly into her eyes with complete certainty. "And this time, we'll finish it together, I promise you, and I know how to keep promises now, sweet girl." 3 months later, the dollhouse stood complete in Claire's small room, painted carefully and filled with tiny handmade furniture inside. Henrik visited one afternoon and saw it sitting proudly on the shelf, and he smiled without saying a word. "You understand now," Henrik finally said, his voice quiet but filled with the wisdom of someone who had walked this path. Finishing isn't about being perfect or talented. It's about being present and doing the work even when it's hard. Every single day you make a small choice that seems insignificant, and those choices become your entire life eventually. Vincent nodded slowly, finally understanding that he had never lacked talent, intelligence, or any special gift from the beginning. He had only lacked a simple system that could carry him through doubt when his feelings tried to sabotage everything. He had learned that real change doesn't come from a single moment of inspiration or a motivational speech from someone. It comes from doing the same small thing every day until it becomes who you are at your deepest core. And that the distance between failure and success is not talent or luck or some mysterious force beyond your control. It's consistency, showing up every day and trusting the system even when you can't see the results yet at all. If you've ever started something important and never finished, you're not broken or lacking some special quality others possess. You just need a system that works even when motivation doesn't, when feelings fade, and when life gets complicated. What's one thing you've been avoiding that you could finish this week if you applied a simple system to it? Drop it in the comments below, and let's hold each other accountable to actually finish what we start together.